Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about depression. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, I am a software engineer at Google. Ooh, battling depression and marijuana addiction. Oh, okay. For the last few years. Will I get fired, do you think, if I tell my boss? What should I do to resolve the situation? Well, I would say that first and foremost, you should have a look at what Google, if Google, yeah, this goes for anybody. It doesn't really matter who it is. Check your company's drug policies, because if you're well, if they have something about that, you should probably not say anything about that part at the very least. So this is usually the problem when confiding into someone, because what you really have to figure out here is whether or not you trust your manager and just how much you trust your manager. Because the thing is that there's a bit of a balancing act here with transparency. So I like to say that when you're building a fence, this is not my saying. It's actually my dad who taught me this one. It's not his either. But if you're building a fence and you hit a nail into a plank, you can remove that nail, but the hole is still there. And that is the sort of situation you find yourself in. If you go and say something about this, you cannot take it back. It's not possible. And you're also giving this information to a person of influence in your life. It's one thing, I mean, if you tell a complete stranger, or you tell someone who is like not actually in a position to make anything happen about this, it's lower risk. But telling your manager, that is a high risk thing. So you really have to ask yourself, do you trust your manager? And you have to weigh this very, very horrible thought. What if you can trust them today, but you can't trust them in 2 years? What if they understand you and try to relate to you, but inside they judge you, and they might actually stop you when you've resolved this from getting a promotion because their view of you has been colored? These are very real things that can happen, and it can happen without you have no control over it. Once the cat is out of the bag, that's it. Have now left your what happens next to the other person. That's why having a high level of trust, and also confide, even if you trust, I mean, in some cases, not the trust is not, that's not even enough. You can trust your best friend and tell them the wrong thing, and then that friendship is over because they are not the sort of person who can deal with information. So there are many more sophisticated, like complex factors that play in whether or not a person is, can you handle the truth? Is it possible? Are you mature enough to deal with it, or do you understand? Do you have a level head? Do you have the wisdom to an EQ to navigate this situation? But on the other hand, if you just bottle everything up, the problem persists, and it might rot, and it might explode. So what I would do in your situation is to really, really ask myself, is my manager the best person to talk to about this thing? I mean, you confided in the internet, and hopefully that gave you some relief, because usually talking about a problem and like working through the issues is the way to go. But you also have to think about, who do you want to help you work through those issues, because unless you really resolve them, they're going to stick around. We don't, nobody really knows what you need as an individual apart from yourself. And if you don't even know, you might need someone to help you with, like a therapist or something like that, to work to the point where you realize that, wow, actually now I feel pretty good about the whole situation. Because I mean, usually dealing with depression and addiction and so forth is one part changing the way that you, like, your perspective, like the way that you look at things and understanding them, and having the mental tools to cope with things that have happened that may be putting you in a bad emotional state. And when it comes to addiction, it's a similar sort of thing. You have to battle the issues and break habits that are very destructive for you. And that is not something that your manager is going to be able to help you with. They are most likely going to listen to you, hopefully, if they're a good manager and you trust them, and then they might give you advice and see if they can help you and try to relate to you. The thing that I can promise you, however, is that if you don't resolve these issues and the problem grows to the point where it starts affecting your work, you're going to get fired. So you need to deal with it. The question is how you want to deal with it. Because even if your manager thinks you're the best person in the world, and this is something that can absolutely happen, you can confide in a person in your company and say, or your manager, and say that I have all these problems, and they will relate and they will understand, and they might give you assistance and stuff like that. They might give you recommendations of how we can resolve this issue, so they can help you out. But if the problem gets to a point where they have to start making some hard choices for you, they're going to let you go. You're going to get fired, so you need to resolve it. So what I want you to take away from this is that I think that in order for you to decide whether or not you should tell your manager about your emotional problems and addictions and so forth, it really comes down to the relationship you have with that person, and how well can you judge if this person is the sort of individual who cannot just be trusted with the information for an unknown amount of time, because they can stab you in the back 10 years later. Like the information is out. I've seen people who used to be best friends, and when they stopped being friends, all the secrets came out on both sides, because now there's no loyalty anymore. So that is a risk that you have to weigh. Like, is your manager trustworthy enough and the sort of person who has the integrity to keep your secrets and like really help you out? Or is there someone else in your life that you can unburden yourself to? Because usually dealing with depression and addiction and so forth, it really comes down to that. You need to work through issues that you have. And sometimes you know about them. You have some sort of self-reflection that has helped you. And sometimes you need someone to help you work through those issues. But usually if you need someone to confide in, there are many options out there, because just unburdening yourself will help quite a long way. But remember, you have to deal with it somehow, because I can promise you, even if you go to your manager and they completely understand, if your work suffers, the people in your place of work will complain and they will let you go, because that is what a company will have to do when an asset stops performing at the level that is acceptable. Remember that. So take this seriously and talk to someone. Have a great day.